Shavua Tov to everyone. This week's parsha is Parashat Korach, a story of the family of Moshe Rabbeinu, Korach, who has envy. He envies Moshe Rabbeinu, or more specifically his brother Aharon HaKohen. Korach was also a Levi, and he wanted to have this appointment of being the high priest. So he saw all of the pride, all of the important jobs being given out to Moshe Rabbeinu's family, to his brother and his kin, his nearer kin, even though also Korach was somewhat kin to him. And then he argued that this isn't fair. Why do you give all of the excellent jobs to your nearest friends? I also deserve. Amech kulam kedoshim now. Because he's making this argument for himself. So he doesn't present it as something in his personal interest. He presents it that he's arguing for the whole Jewish people, that the entire Jewish people, the entire body of the Jewish people are all holy. Every Jew is equal. And therefore you should distribute the wealth of leadership, of pride, of jobs, of also just regular wealth should be distributed more evenly. But really what he's arguing for is himself, because he, like Chazal explained, he had a certain calculation where he saw that he should be the successor. He's higher up in the ranks of succeeding Moshe Rabbeinu or other jobs given out than Aharon HaKohen. So he says that there's an unfairness happening here. And that's the story of Korach. Now, what he's opposing Moshe Rabbeinu about is, again, in so many words, is saying that you're proud. You're a proud man. You're full of yourself. Instead of giving out the jobs, the leadership, you're consolidating it all in yourself. You think only yourself to be self-righteous. Now we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, the Torah praises him as being the most modest man in the world. Ha'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol ha'adam asher pnei adama. That's what the Torah says, that he's extremely modest. So the Ishbitzer asks, again, a simple question, that how can it be that in this precise point of excellence, where Moshe Rabbeinu exceeds everyone else, and the Torah, again, identifies him and specifies that this is his excellence, where he's very, very modest, he's very meek. How can it be that this is the point that that his leadership is argued upon? And the biggest machlekes, the biggest dispute on Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership is in our parsha, and it all evolves around, again, his apparent pride. So how can it be that the biggest dispute on him evolves around the point that the Torah explicitly says that he was the most excellent in? So in order to explain this, we'll contemplate on a saying by the Alter Rebbe. There's a very famous saying from the Alter Rebbe. He quotes this from Chazal. Our sages teach, there's a statement in the Gemara, where one of the sages asks another sage, "B'mai have avuch zahir tfei?" That's in Aramaic. And what it literally reads is, what was your father? Again, this sage is asking another sage about his ancestors. And his question, in order to get to know your father, I want to relate to the previous generation. So he asks him, please tell me, what did your father exceed in? What was his specific point where he shined the most? And the phrase for what he exceeded in is zahil. So actually what that literally means, this is the point we want to make, is simply the word zahil means what was he the most careful in. So where was he the most mehader, machmir? Where was he the most? Which mitzvah? The answer there, that sage answers, is that my father was the most careful about his tzitzis, the end of the previous parsha. So that was this sage's father. He was his extreme excellency, like his mitzvah, his most fond mitzvah was tzitzit, and he was very medaktik. He was very careful about his tzitzis being the most kosher and beautiful and wonderful tzitzis that you could get. Now, from this portion of the Gemara, you see that every person has like a uniqueness. I mean, everybody has mitzvot. We all have the 613 commandments that we're all commanded to do. But other than that, other than the mutual set of rules or guidance that the Torah gives us, there's also an individual uniqueness to every person. Every person connects or feels a kinship, a special focus on a certain aspect of life, a certain mitzvah. Just like this Gemara asks. So when this sage wanted to get to know his friend's ancestors, the first thing he asked is, so what was his thing? What was his specific thing? Every person has a thing. So other than the mutual devotion and the mutual demands from every person. Every person also has his uniqueness. That uniqueness is a very, very special thing. Now, the word for this uniqueness in the Gemara is zahir. B'may have avuch zahir tfei. What was your father extremely careful about? So, being careful, trepidatious. The word is zahir, careful. Now, the Alter Rebbe, he reads this word differently, and he says the word zahir can also mean zohar, like the book of Zohar. What does the word zohar mean in Hebrew? Zohar means shine, a special shine. So in that reference, you can read what was your father most careful about. Can also read where did your father shine the most? What was his most shiny point? Now, seemingly, this is a contradiction. This is how the Alter Rebbe read it. But that's seemingly a contradiction, because saying that, I mean, it would be my intuitive thought that if someone is very careful about something, and that thing that he's careful about is because it's his weak spot. I mean, usually you need to funnel all of your trepidation to your weak spot. So if you know that there's a certain mitzvah or a certain forbidden thing to do that you're very, very prone to, and you need to be very careful about, that's where you funnel all of your trepidation. So the simple meaning of the Gemara, when you ask what someone was the most careful about, you'd think that would be his weakest spot. But then comes the Alter Rebbe and reads the same verse in the exact opposite manner, saying that this word for careful also can be read as shining. So that's like your strong spot. So if I say this is where you shine the most, so this is your strong point. What is your strongest point? So the question is asked, what does this phrase mean? Again, very often you can find different interpretations of one phrase, but not very often do you see, only if you delve very deeply can you see that the differing interpretations are actually 180 degrees contradictory. They're head on. So here it's very explicit that the simple meaning of being careful is something that's a weak spot, but it can also be read as your shiniest, strong spot. So what is this this uniqueness of every person? Is one's uniqueness his weakness, or is one's uniqueness his strengths? So how this is explained in Chasidut can explain exactly what the Ishbitzer is saying in our parsha. So this question is again very, very similar to what we just asked about Moshe Rabbeinu. And on the one hand, the Torah explicitly says that his shiny spot, his strong spot, was his modesty. But on the other hand, you see that this is what he's being tackled for as his point of weakness, that this is why you shouldn't be a leader. So is this his weakness or his shiny, strong spot? So in order to explain that, we want to again note like a psychological phenomena, that there's an bichlal in Yiddishkeit, in Torah, there's a certain derogatory notion, or again a safe space from an overly exceeding sacrifice in certain areas of life. Like, don't be too much of a tzaddik. So there's what you're demanded to do, and the Torah, the halacha, is very careful to guide a person not to go over the top. Right? So if anybody would want to, just me or you, want to do all sorts of things more than everyone else, like putting on, instead of one pair of tefillin, we'll decide, like the Hasidim today put on two pairs of tefillin, like Rabbeinu Tam. But not many people know there are another two pairs, another two different aspects. You can put on four pairs of tefillin as well. There were very great tzaddikim that did that. But if just any guy in the street decides to do that, so it's not so clear that that's a positive thing. The halacha will frown upon. Simply, a simple interpretation of the halacha would say that doing anything that sets you apart from the others, like trying to bulge and be unique and stand out, it's not a good thing to do. Again, why? Because it's a proud notion. So it's not so simple. The phrase in halacha is yohara. A person is not allowed to do things because of yohara. So one of the examples in halacha is what I just said, putting on Rabbeinu Tam tefillin. So it's not so clear in halacha that you're allowed to do it. And there were a lot of again, differing opinions of when to start, if to start putting on two pairs of tefillin after the wedding. Today, it's very widely custom within Hasidim to put on tefillin, two pairs of tefillin from your bar mitzvah. But that wasn't the case not so many years ago. Why? Because it's like a notion of don't be so unique, don't be so special. So it's not so easy to be unique, to stand out. Why? Because when you stand out, again, there's something about standing out of the crowd, out of the tzibur, out of the congregation, again, that makes you a bulge, it makes you full of yourself. And so you go to shul, everybody's putting on one pair of tefillin, then you put on two pairs of tefillin. So if that's the case, then not only is it not part of your service of Hashem, not only is it not connecting you to Hashem more, it's only making it's against part of your service of yourself, just your self-indulgence. So obviously all of the mitzvot They're supposed to be reflecting your connection to Hashem. But if a mitzvah becomes a stage for your personal ego, so that's not a good thing. Now, if it's something that you're commanded to do, okay, so you have to do it. But if not, then it can work like a boomerang effect and have the exact opposite effect of what we want. So this is why the halacha is not so fond, not so keen about people bulging. So now we'll go back to our topic of where can a person bulge? And we said in this Gemara here that there is such a thing, that a person has a uniqueness. Now, not only the Gemara says that, also we know that every person knows he has a uniqueness. Every person is unique, other than being part of the congregation, being part of the people. Not trying to be proud and to bulge outwards and that everybody notices me. Okay, but I do have a statement within myself. Every person does have his unique personality, his unique specialties. So where can I express my uniqueness? If I constantly have to be trepidatious about not bulging too much, not standing out too much, and not being proud, so where am I going to express my uniqueness? So that's where this topic that we're discussing comes in. A person's weaknesses, like his weakest points, are like a focusing place on where you can funnel your excellence. And you can be excellent only where you're weak. Why? And because if you try to excel in a place that's naturally easy for you, then it will inevitably turn into something very, very proud. So let's say a person wants to walk down the street with his eyes covered because of tznius. He doesn't want to see anything at all. Okay, but if you have an inclination toward these things, and you've fallen a lot in tznius or something, again, I'm taking this as an example, then if you decide to take extreme measures to distance yourself from these bad things. Now, let's say a person has issues with the internet. Like today, there's a lot of problems. So he has a problem with non-modest things on the internet. Okay, so because it's a challenge for him, so he decides that he's never going to touch any technological. He's not going to have a phone. He's not going to have a computer. He's not going to touch anything ever. Why? Because if it's really coming from a weakness, then how will he go about this? He won't flaunt it. He won't go around flaunting his weakness, because he doesn't make him proud. It makes him feel that the whole world can see his hole, his hollow place. So he's embarrassed about it. He covers it up. So on the one hand, he's capable of taking this point to extreme measures. But not only does it not become a bulging of his ego, of his pride, it becomes something reflecting Hashem's mercy, Hashem's presence. Again, where I'm weak, really weak, I really have difficulties, that's a place that I can excel and I can devote myself very strongly, any aspect, every person in his own aspect. And nonetheless, it won't make me feel full of myself, because if I'm aware of my weakness, then I feel that my success or my ability to refrain from something or shine in something is HaKadosh Baruch Hu helping me. Now, the weaker I am, the more I can excel in something uniquely from the public without feeling that this is I'm such a special person, because it's my weakness. So I'd even be embarrassed, in a sense, of my strange behavior. I don't want people to know it's so difficult for me that I can't hold a computer or something of the sorts. So if it's my weakness, then I can take it. But if it's not my weakness, I don't have these issues, and I just decide to go over the top with all sorts of unique behaviors, so it very easily becomes a bulge. It becomes something that I flaunt. Here, look at me. I'm so holy that I don't look in the street. I walk down the street this way. I don't look right or left. Now, again, if that's really your issue, this is something that's challenging you on a daily basis, then you won't flaunt it. All the more so, the opposite. You'll try hiding it, so you can maintain meekness and modesty, but still excel in something. So what do we see here? That there's actually a perfect correlation between a person's weak spots and strong spots. Whenever your specific inherent weakness, every person knows, just like everybody has a sense of a statement, of a uniqueness that he wants to express, everybody also knows that each and every one of us have weak spots. And there's a correlation between those two. Where you're weakest, where you're most challenged, those are the places that you can funnel the most efforts in life and excel and even do more than the population, than your congregation. And not only will it not become a coarse pride, not only will it not become full of yourself, you'll remain completely meek, because it will express to you how weak you are and how much you need to put an effort into it. It won't express to you how special and holy you are. So your weakness is the place where you can devote yourself the most. Now this is how he explains also in our parasha. Why was Moshe Rabbeinu apparent to the congregation as someone who might be pride? Because in the words of the Ishbitzer, it's true. This was his weakest spot. He had an inclination. He sensed very deeply his constant inclination towards pride and towards taking all of the leadership to himself. He felt his desire to that, his not good desire. That's the reason that his entire life he was very, very self-scrutinizing about this. So much so that the Torah, at the end of his life, testified that he became the meekest person, like the most non-pride person in the world because of his inclination. The reason he was able to do it in a way that he could be separate and different and unique from all the people in a certain aspect is because that was his weakest aspect. Now, that's also the reason that he was attacked for that. He was being badgered over that because it was true. He really had this inclination. It also says in the Torah that when Korach comes to Moshe Rabbeinu and he says, Madua titnasu, why are you acting up? Why are you so full of yourself? So it says that Moshe Rabbeinu fell on his face. He immediately believed him. Why? Because he knew within himself that this is true. I'm inclined to such behavior. But really, he wasn't. He wasn't acting it out. Because of his exceeding sensitivity to that weakness of his, he was able to devote himself so much to being the opposite that he excelled in this aspect. So where each and every one of us is very weak, that's where we're capable of funneling our excellence. And the excellence that will be exposed to our weaknesses, specifically, won't be personal excellence. The world won't see this immense person, I'm such a special person. It will express Hashem's mercy on us, how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us. Yet, as long as I funnel my excellence to where my weaknesses are, so my success will express also to myself and also to the world that this is Hashem's excellence, because I'm weak. But if I try funneling, again, unique behaviors in all sorts of directions that aren't so difficult for me, then the success will really enhance my pride. I'll feel full of myself that look how special I am. And that's not a good thing. But where can I funnel my excellence? Where can I be unique, each and every one of us? Now again, this is true. Everyone has a uniqueness, a very precious point. The most precious point, like the Gemara says, what was your father the most careful about? So he was the most careful where he was the weakest. And that's also where he shined the most. That's why the word for careful and shining is the same word, because your weak point is what enables you to have an excellent strong point. And that's where we need to funnel all of our strength and all of our efforts. Mizrat Hashem, so that's it for this week. Mizrat Hashem, we shall all have a Shavua Tov.